Hi there, Jeff here from OIA. Following on from our recent Ask iManage in Action webinar, we just wanted to give you a shorter version including the use cases that Brett ran us through on the session. So the first thing we're going to look at is some use cases revolving around question lists, Q&A and data extraction, and this might be things like lease to asset reconciliation or drafting clauses. Then we'll look at some use cases that revolve around using the search agent and then actioning the results that we get from that agent, which might include drafting an agreement, analysing incident reports, or summarising an entire matter. And then Brett will take us on to some additional use cases like doing chronologies or compliance reviews across a matter. So let's get into it.
Okay, so now we're going to take a look at some real life use cases, as Jeff mentioned. I guess what we're going to be today, we're going to try and move on from that kind of manual review and extraction data around individual documents. I'm going to start trying to show some extracting structured data from not just one document, but multiple documents, looking to identify patterns, generate insights. And importantly, we're not just going to do this at the document level. We're going to do it across matters, across clients, and potentially also across the entire DMS. So just to start here, we're going to have a look at this use case around question lists. And I just want to define a little bit better what a question list is. A question list is a predefined set of questions. It's specific for the work that you're doing, specific for the documents that you're working on. It follows the company standards and it can be shared. It's important that it can be shared out, so that way you can set your standards and have your junior employees follow those standards. I was chatting to an accountant a couple of weeks ago now who was using ChatGPT at the time, and they have been storing their questions in a spreadsheet and sharing them out to people. So the prompts that they've decided are useful, they put in a spreadsheet. I think you'll clearly agree that using question lists or storing them in iManage is a much better way to do that. So we're going to run through a couple of examples around these question lists. We've got here a lease to asset reconciliation, which is an example for an accountant. In this example, we've got a number of questions we want to ask about leases. So perhaps they have some leases for a client and they want to pull information out of them and match it back to the asset for that client, back to the asset register. We can ask some questions here, such as try and pull out the VIN number, the serial number or the address that's relevant for the lease. We might want to find out about the lease term. We might want to ask about the parties and who are in the lease. And we can use that type of question list to pull information out of those leases. Another popular one for accountants we're seeing is trust deeds. So they seem to like reviewing trust deeds and pulling the information out of that so they can review the financial obligations and the like for their clients. In the legal world, you can do lots of this around any type of contract. We'll have a look at an example around an employment agreement here, but I like to think you can do this anytime you're keeping a register of documents, anytime you need to review perhaps the risk level of contracts, the amount of money that you've got in contracts. You can start using question lists to extract that information. Okay, so let's jump into a real example of this. So here we've got a number of leases. We've got some vehicle agreement leases. We've got some hire agreement leases. We've got some property leases. So we're going to select some of these leases, and then we're going to go to Ask iManage, and we're going to start a review of them. It then grabs those documents and puts them in that table view that you saw Jeff demonstrate a little earlier, and starts running some questions immediately over those. Starts doing a bit of a mini summary and pulling out the class or the type of document there. Whilst it's doing that, I can continue on and look to choose my question list. So you can see here we've got a number of question lists, and as I said, these are all shared out, so everybody can potentially use these question lists throughout the organisation. In this case, we're looking for the lease to asset reconciliation question list. We're going to click on that, and then it's going to start processing those questions over those leases. You can do, I think at the moment, you can do up to 50 documents and potentially do, I think iManage are working to do more than that. It might even be 100 at the moment and potentially improving that as time goes by. So you can see here, we've then extracted that information. You've got a little zoom option here, so you can zoom out and review that information a little better. And then you've also got those evidence pills Jeff alluded to earlier. So you can look here and then see, okay, where did that information actually come from? Make sure it's correct, because whilst AI is pretty good, it's not necessarily 100% correct these days, and you can check those answers that it's been given. So in the end, take that information. Obviously, you've got the VIN numbers and the serial numbers, etc. Take it back and then compare it against your asset list and match the lease against the corresponding asset. If you like, you can export that out to Excel. And here's an example of where I've exported that out to Excel. And you can save that information back into iManage, use that to compare with your asset spreadsheet. So a nice example there in the accounting world of how you might use the question list. Just going to jump over now into a legal example. So in this case, we're going to review these employment agreements Jeff was talking about earlier. So we can select a few of these employment agreements. And again, we can start a review on those documents via Ask iManage. So in this example, what the lawyer is trying to do is they're trying to draft a document. But to do that, they want to look back at some of the documents they've used previously, perhaps some of their best practice documents and the like that they've got stored in iManage. They can come into Ask iManage and ask a question of each of those documents, find that question list that is based on their best practice. Got an employment agreement question list here, and Ask iManage will then go through and run those questions against those documents. So it doesn't take too long to start pulling that information out. As I mentioned before, you can do up to, I think it's 50 documents at the moment, perhaps even more that you can select. So we'll give that a couple of seconds for it to start to pull back that information. And here it comes. As I said, we've got that little zoom option, so we can zoom in and out. So in this case, they're particularly interested in the notice period and termination clauses. So they can easily review those common notice period and termination clauses that they have used elsewhere, and potentially pick one from that list to include. However, we want to take it a step further. So in this table panel here, we've got the option to do an ask across. So in this case, we're going to ask it to please draft a comprehensive notice period clause based on the average of those documents. So not only are we able to review those clauses to make sure they're the ones we want, we can then ask iManage to actually draft a notice period clause for us to include in our document. What's nice there is it will show that thinking process, and you can see actually what it's doing, which again is very important for AI, so that you know exactly what it's doing, where it's going to get the documents, to get the information, and how it's going about its steps. So we'll give that a couple of seconds, and we should get a notice period clause generated in a second. As Jeff mentioned, sometimes when you're in a demo, it feels a lot longer than it does in real life, but that only took a few seconds there to really bring back that notice period clause for us. And it's giving it a really good job there. So we can potentially take that notice period clause and then include that in our employment agreement. Okay, so now we're going to jump over, and we're going to take that one step further. We've got our chat window here, which Jeff showed. On this occasion, we're going to actually generate an entire document. And I'll just show this one here rather than running through it, just to save a little bit of time. But what we've done here, we've asked it to review the provided employment agreements and draft a single comprehensive employment agreement based on the common clauses in these documents. We've decided we want it to set the employee to Brett McDonald. I'm going to have a slightly reduced salary there of $2 million, and we're going to set the jurisdiction to New South Wales. And we're going to ask it to include the standard clauses around duties, etc. You can see there it's gone through that thinking process, and at the end of that process, it's come out with a nice employment agreement draft for us. We can potentially take that and start our document. Jeff, did you want to comment on the validity of creating documents this way?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, a lot of people are talking about using AI tools to draft documents, which of course you can, and we can see this example here. But a lot of our customers are using, very structured templates. They're also using data assembly tools like Smarter Drafter to build out documents in a particular way and ensure they've got content in them in a particular fashion and terms and conditions and stuff like that as well. So, this is somewhere in between where we can create content, we can draft documents, but we also need to make sure that they're going into a standard template or something that's relevant to the organisation.
That's right. So this might provide a starting point, but you also probably have your templates and the like that you need to consider how exactly to use these drafted documents in your processes. Okay, so what we've done there, as I mentioned, we actually grabbed a few documents and we created the employment agreement based on that. We could have actually said there, please review all employment agreements in the system. We could have done that. We could have looked at a folder as well and had it review documents in a folder. So there's a number of ways you could actually do that. Another example I just want to show is around a witness statement option. So in this case, the client Beach Hub is having a dispute with one of the people they sublease their premises to. And there's been some witness statements that have been provided, one by Beach Hub, your client, one by the leasee involved in the dispute, and another by the building manager. So we've asked it to review the 3 witness statements that we've given it, and we've asked it to identify agreed facts, highlight inconsistencies, and comment on the credibility of those witnesses. So we're really moving beyond just generative AI and generating documents to actually where AI is starting to do some reasoning for us. Have a look at those witness statements and actually reason and give me some feedback on actually what's occurring. So it's gone through there and it's given the agreed facts. It's outlined some inconsistencies, and then it's commented on the credibility of those witnesses. So, for example, Blue Wave Marking, who the dispute is with, it has mentioned that they might have a bias in interpreting the access terms. And as mentioned, me as the director of Beach Hub might have a bias in downplaying the tenant's expectations. So I'm not saying this is something you're taking to the court as it is, but it gives you a good overview of what's happening in those witness statements and allows you to take that step further as you would wish. Okay, so we're going to jump over into another example now, similar to that. In this case, we're going to look at some incident reports. So an incident report might be something that occurs within a firm, within your organisation, where something has happened that shouldn't. So, for example, perhaps you've sent the wrong documents out to the wrong client and you need to record that somewhere. Perhaps you've started your work with the client, but before you've got a signed agreement in place with them. And you've stored that information within iManage. Here, we can have a look at our incident report, and we can ask it to actually review the incident reports, find all incident reports within the entire DMS, and tell me any common incidents that are occurring and ways I can address them. So again, not only is it looking for what's common in those incident reports, it's starting to reason and tell us some ideas of how we might even address those incidents that are occurring. And we've asked it to draft the report aimed at a C-level executive. So perhaps we have to do this to our CEO as a way we're going to go about addressing things in the future. So here it's given us a draft report here. It's identified the common incidents across those reports. It's talked about any mitigation strategies we might want to put in place. And importantly, it's provided those documents as well and those evidence pills as well. So we can jump there and see where it got all that information from. So really nice. We've got a nice little report there on the incidents that are occurring, the common ones and the potential mitigation strategies that we might carry out to ensure those incidents don't happen in the future. Now, what I've shown there is some examples around individual documents largely, perhaps searching for individual documents across the system. What we're going to look at now is actually doing that across a matter. So I'm sure that's something everybody would love to be able to do, perhaps look across a matter and find some information about an actual matter. So here I'm going to start a new chat. I'm going to ask it to please provide a detailed summary of what has happened in this matter in chronological order. And again, I can filter, and obviously if you want to save time and also give it better information to ground itself in, you can filter to a particular matter. So I'm going to choose the Beach Hub advisory matter, select that, and I'm going to kick off that review of that matter. So this is going to look over the complete matter. Some of the examples I've seen in practice here are that someone might just want to look over the last 4 months. They might want to look over the last week. They might want to actually see what emails have been sent over the last week to a client. So obviously, perhaps you might have a meeting with the client. This is a really good way to get a quick overview of what's happening with the matter before you walk into them to that meeting with them. So we'll give that a few moments whilst it goes through and produce that detailed summary. As you can see, it's going through that thinking process, which is, again, obviously very important, so you can see what it's doing, how it's making its decisions, how it's giving you the information that you need. I'll give that one a few seconds just to complete the summary. Yeah, and there's a little variable. You can actually go away and do other things while this is happening. So sometimes it might take 30 seconds. Sometimes in a demo, it might take a minute, which feels like a year. But it doesn't actually take that long to do this work compared to potentially reviewing the matter from start to finish and having someone else do that work for you. So let's give that a few moments to come back.
Brett, can we show the, what we can do with managing the lists there as well? So your recent chats and stuff, you can actually delete them or save them as well, can't you?
Exactly. Yeah, very good point. So there's those recent chats, they're all accessible again. So I think it keeps them for up to, I believe it's 3 months is what I've been told. So you can go back and get these chats and then continue on chatting with them. So it keeps that context, keeps the chat there. You can rename them to something that's more meaningful. And you can then come back and continue chatting as you need to. Kind of been using ChatGPT or the like, very similar to that. You can see here it's then gone through and provide a chronological summary of that matter, what's happened in early 2025 when we started with the letter of advice, the work that was done in mid to late 2025, what happened in early 2026 and current ongoing activities. And again, it's given us those evidence pills and it's given a list of those documents there, which we can potentially do more work on there. We can actually ask further questions of those documents as well, if we wish. So that's fantastic. That's a matter level summary. You're probably asking now, what happens if I want to find out what's happening to an entire client? So we can, I've got one already created for this. So this is, we've said to it for the client Beach Hub. So we've actually just told it the client. iManage knows that context of what a client is. Please give me an overview timeline as what has happened to this client. And again, it's gone through its thinking process and given me a timeline for that entire client. It's reviewed all the documents, all the emails in there and come back and told me what's been happening for that client over the life that we've had that client. So a great way there to go and get a summary of the information that you need, perhaps before you're having a meeting with the client or the like. Now, that's all great. I was chatting to a lawyer, I think it was a week and a half ago. They came back to me and said, look, those overviews are fantastic. At being a lawyer, obviously, he had some particular requirements in how he wanted to do this. And what he wanted was a way to actually look for all the key events that were occurring for a particular client, not just in perhaps contracts and documents and the like, but also throughout emails. Perhaps there's been a meeting requested or the like. And he wanted to put that all into a table. And not only did he want to put that into the table, he then wanted to have a link to each of those documents in this table so we could easily see where it was mentioned and continue to work on this client. So this is quite a tough one, but I think what it shows is that the output you can get from iManage is really limited to your imagination. And this is really where we can help. If there's something you think you can get out of iManage, but you can't, come to us and we can help you formulate these prompts, as we've had quite a bit of experience now in working through this. And what we came up with here was, for the client Beach Hub, please review all documents and emails and generate a chronological table of the key events. We've given it a definition of what an event is. Obviously, we don't want it just to make this up. We've given it some ideas, maybe a contract that's been executed or terminated, key obligations, and maybe significant communications. We've given it some further context that we don't want it. We want it to ignore duplicates, duplicate events throughout emails. And then we've given it this format that we want it to put into that table. We want the date, we want the event, the document name, the document number, and the link. Now, the link was the trickiest one for me to figure out, but in the end, it was actually quite simple. I just told it we want a link format like the Cloud iManage URL plus the document number. As simple as that in the end. And then we've been able to put that in a chronological order. So the outcome of that is that it gave us a list of all those events in chronological order, listed the document type and the document number, and the link there. I was then able to cut and paste that quite easily out from there and put that in Excel. So as you can see, then we've then got the dates and the links. You can just click on that link and it will take us to that document. So a nice and easy way to find a key event that might be happening for a client, and then find the document related to that key event. Okay, so we're going to show one more example here. So this is around, obviously, you probably have a variety of compliance obligations you might need to carry out around a matter, whether you're accounting, whether you're legal. We're going to have a look at an example around anti-money laundering here. But this could be any type of compliance activity. Perhaps you need to carry out an audit. Perhaps you need tax compliance reasons. Perhaps you just need to do a quality check over a matter to make sure that it's done ticked all the boxes that are needed. In this case, we've asked for the client Beach Hub. Again, iManage can recognize who the client is based on the fact you've called it the client. Review all obligations and review all documents and emails, whether there might be any anti-money laundering obligations. We've given it some context around what to particularly look for. As an example, perhaps we're going to look for some unusual high-risk indicators such as offshore entities or third-party funding or the like. And then we've asked it to finalize that input with a concise summary of the compliance status, some key risks flags, and recommended next steps. And again, it's gone through and shown you the thinking process there. And then it started to go through that process. So it's going to provide the evidence around identity verification. It's going to look at the source of funds and unusual or high-risk indicators. So as an example there, it's found one email that mentions the related offshore entity that is involved in the funding of the deposit. So that might be something that needs to be investigated a little further just to see if that was done correctly. At the end there, it's then gone through and provided an overall risk rating for that matter and its rationale around how it got there. And finally, just finishing there, a bit of a summary, the key risks, etc., and recommended next steps. So quite nice there. I'm sure you've got lots of compliance or risk or QA activities that need to be carried out over the top of a matter, over the top of a client to ensure you're meeting all your obligations. So there we have it. That's it for my bit. What we've seen there, we've seen how to extract data from documents, not just individual documents, but multiple documents and via the question lists. We've analysed patterns and risks, and we've done some reasoning across that. We've drafted some clauses and we've drafted some documents, and really nicely, we've then generated some insights across our clients and across our matters.
So there you have it. Some real world use cases and how they can be achieved using some of the Ask iManage functionality and the kind of outputs that we're going to get. Don't forget, Ask iManage is available in the iManage Cloud now. Please get in touch if you want more information or a longer demonstration or some hands-on workshops. And don't forget to like on the YouTube channel as well. Thanks very much. See you guys.